She arrived prepared to dismantle Barron Trump with sharp arguments, but as he coolly countered, her confidence wavered. Inside Stanford University's Memorial Auditorium, anticipation buzzed. Every seat was filled, and students lined the walls, craning for a view. The event had dominated campus discussions for weeks, a much-hyped debate between Barron Trump and Maya Thompson. Barron, the youngest son of President Donald Trump, had mostly stayed out of politics but recently gained attention for his sharp intellect and calm, methodical debating style. His supporters praised him as a rising conservative voice, articulate, composed, and well-armed with facts. His opponent, Maya Thompson, was equally familiar with the public stage. A senior political science major and president of the Progressive Student Alliance, she was known for passionate activism. With rainbow-colored hair and a flair for fiery speeches, she had led protests advocating for wealth redistribution, climate action, and tuition-free college. Many saw her as a bold, future progressive leader. The debate topic was as contentious as it was timely. Is capitalism still America's best economic system? The audience was split. Some wore Keep America Great hats, while others sported Eat the Rich shirts. Tension hung thick in the air. At exactly 7 p.m., the moderator, Dr. Evelyn Harris, stepped forward. A highly regarded political science professor, she had made it clear in interviews that interruptions or grandstanding would not be tolerated. Adjusting her microphone, she scanned the audience before speaking. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we discuss a question that affects us all. Amid economic uncertainty, inflation, and debates over wealth distribution, the role of capitalism in America is more pressing than ever. The room fell silent. Arguing in favor of capitalism as the best system is Barron Trump. Barron, in a tailored navy suit, stepped forward, his calm demeanor unwavering as he nodded to the crowd. Opposing this stance, arguing for a more equitable alternative, is Maya Thompson. Maya approached the podium, donning a black blazer over a t-shirt reading People Over Profits. She swept back her brightly colored hair and adjusted her mic. Dr. Harris continued, each debater will have 5 minutes for opening statements, followed by rebuttals, cross-examinations and closing remarks. Audience members, please remain respectful. Let's begin. Maya took the stage first, eyes alight. Thank you, Dr. Harris. Tonight, we're not just debating ideas, we're debating real lives, real struggles, people barely affording rent, juggling multiple jobs just to survive, watching billionaires hoard wealth while choosing between food and medicine. Capitalism, as we know it, is a rigged system, and it's time we acknowledge that reality. Scattered applause broke out among her supporters. She continued, 4 years, we've been told that hard work guarantees success. But if that were true, why are millions drowning in debt while the top 1% own more wealth than the bottom half combined? The American dream is a myth designed to keep us complacent. Cheers erupted from the left side of the room, but Barron remained unfazed. He folded his hands and waited. Dr. Harris turned to him. Mr. Trump, your opening statement. Barron stepped up, pausing briefly before speaking in an even, measured tone. Maya presents an emotional argument, but emotion doesn't solve economic issues, facts do. Applause came from the right side. Capitalism isn't perfect, no system is, but history proves one thing, it is the most effective system for lifting people out of poverty. Don't take my word for it, compare free market economies to socialist ones. The results speak for themselves. Maya smirked, folding her arms. Barron pressed on. You claim the American dream is a lie, but then why do millions risk everything to come here? If capitalism were a failure, wouldn't they be running the other way? A murmur rippled through the crowd, and even some of Maya's supporters shifted in their seats. But the real clash was just beginning. Maya didn't flinch. She gripped the podium, leaning forward. People come to America because they have no other choice. They flee violence, war, and collapsing economies, many of which were destabilized by American corporations chasing profit. Capitalism doesn't lift people up, it exploits them. The left side erupted in cheers. She pressed on. You want data? Here's data. The top 1% own more than the entire middle class combined. Wages have stagnated for decades, while the cost of living skyrockets. CEOs earn 300 times their workers' salaries, yet conservatives call it free enterprise instead of what it is, economic oppression. She swept a hand across the audience. And let's not forget the planet. Capitalism prioritizes profit over survival. Climate change accelerates because billion-dollar industries refuse to slow their destruction. If this system is fair, why do the hardest workers, teachers, nurses, factory workers, struggle the most? More applause. Maya lifted her chin, confident her words had struck a chord. But Barron remained unshaken. He let the silence stretch before adjusting the microphone. Then in a calm, almost conversational tone he said, "Let's break that down, shall we?"
The room hushed.
You blame capitalism for America's problems.
So, what's the alternative?
Socialism?
Communism?
Show me a country where those have worked.
Venezuela? Cuba?
The Soviet Union? How did those turn out?
A shift in the room.
A few of Maya's supporters frowned. Sensing the momentum shift, Barron continued, "You talk about wealth inequality, and you're right, it exists. But you know what else exists? Upward mobility. America's richest weren't always rich. Elon Musk came here with nothing. Oprah Winfrey grew up in poverty. Jeff Bezos started Amazon in a garage. The reason America remains the most prosperous nation is because capitalism rewards innovation and hard work." Maya tapped her fingers against the podium, narrowing her eyes. "So, your argument is that struggling Americans should just be grateful they're not starving in a third-world country?" Barron shook his head.
No.
"I'm saying demonizing capitalism while benefiting from everything it provides is hypocritical." The words lingered. Maya opened her mouth to fire back, but something in the room had shifted. A tension neither side could ignore. For the first time that night, Maya hesitated. She exhaled sharply, gripping the podium's edge. She wasn't used to being challenged like this, not with logic as precise as Barron's. But she wasn't backing down. "Hypocritical?" she echoed, disbelief lacing her voice. "So just because I live in a capitalist society, I can't criticize it? That's ridiculous. By that logic, you shouldn't criticize socialism if you've never lived under it." Cheers erupted from her side.
She pressed forward.
"Capitalism doesn't reward hard work, it rewards wealth. That's why billionaires keep getting richer while full-time workers barely afford rent."
You want proof?
"Explain why someone working 40 hours a week still can't afford a one-bedroom apartment in most cities. Explain why people with 3 jobs still rely on food stamps."
Louder applause.
Barron nodded, acknowledging her point, but remained unfazed. "Maya, you're assuming wealth is static, like a pie with limited
slices.
That's not how economics works. Wealth is created. When someone becomes a billionaire, they don't take money from the poor, they provide value that people willingly pay for." Maya crossed her arms.
Oh, please.
"Don't give me that job creator nonsense. Billionaires don't reinvest in workers, they exploit them." Barron raised an eyebrow.
Really?
"Then why do countries with the most billionaires also have the highest standards of living? If billionaires were the problem, wouldn't socialist countries, where wealth is supposedly shared, be thriving instead of failing?" The right side of the audience clapped. Barron wasn't just debating, he was dictating the room's energy. Maya wasn't done. She took a deep breath, shifting to an emotional appeal. "You talk about numbers, but what about real people? Have you ever had to choose between rent and groceries? Have you ever worried about medical bills? You live in privilege, Barron. You don't get to lecture struggling people about hard work when you were born into wealth." A loud cheer erupted from her side. Barron sighed, shaking his head.
"Ah, the privilege argument.
The idea that my background disqualifies my opinions. Let me ask you this, Maya, do facts change depending on who says them? If I were born poor and made the same argument, would you listen?" Maya hesitated. Barron didn't let the pause linger. "You keep bringing up struggling people, and you're right, struggles exist. But the answer isn't tearing down the system that has lifted more people out of poverty than any other in history. The solution is to fix what's broken while keeping what works. Do you really think government control is the answer? Because history shows that when governments take over economies, the only people who get richer are the politicians." Maya opened her mouth, but for the first time, she sensed the audience shifting. Barron was turning the tide. Her confidence was still there, but piece by piece, it had been chipped away. She had statistics, prepared rebuttals, but Barron wasn't just throwing numbers at her. He was making her confront contradictions she hadn't fully considered. Still, she wasn't letting him win easily. "You act like capitalism is an equalizer," she shot back, frustration sharpening her tone. "But what you're really defending is a system that lets billionaires hoard wealth while millions suffer. How is that fair? How do you justify an economic model where CEOs make hundreds of times more than their employees, while those employees can't even afford basic health care?" Loud applause. Maya turned to her supporters, feeding off their energy. "Let me make this simple. You talk about opportunity, but let's be real, capitalism benefits the rich. If it were fair, Why do the wealthiest Americans keep getting richer while the middle class disappears? A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. It was a familiar argument, one that resonated with those who felt left behind.
Barron remained too calm.
He exhaled slightly, locking eyes with her. Maya, let me ask you one thing. If capitalism is as oppressive as you claim, if the system is truly rigged against everyday people, then why do immigrants from all over the world risk their lives to come here?
Silence. Maya blinked. The entire room went still. She had an answer, she had to. But suddenly, her mind was blank. The way he had framed the question was so simple, yet she had never truly considered it from that angle. Barron didn't press. He just stood there waiting.
Maya's lips parted, a response forming, but no words came.
The pause stretched.
Then, two whispers spread through the audience. Some students exchanged glances, while others watched Maya's expression closely. The moderator subtly shifted in her seat, clearly aware that the silence was stretching too long. Maya swallowed, finally managing, because they're desperate. They don't have another choice. Barron tilted his head slightly. Exactly. They come here because capitalism gives them a chance. Not a guarantee, but a chance. If capitalism were truly the root of their suffering, they wouldn't be running toward it. They'd be running away.
You call it oppression.
They call it opportunity.
More whispers. A few heads nodded.
Maya inhaled sharply. She needed to regain control fast. That doesn't mean the system is fair, she snapped. People come here because America has more resources, not because capitalism is some magical solution.
Barron shrugged.
If resources alone were enough, Venezuela and North Korea would be thriving.
But they're not.
Because resources don't create wealth, innovation, freedom, and opportunity do. And that's what capitalism provides. His words settled over the room. Maya scanned the crowd, searching for support, but something had changed. The applause wasn't as loud this time. Some of her own supporters had stopped clapping altogether. She had lost her footing, and Barron knew it.
She could feel it. The shift.
The energy in the room wasn't the same as before. She wasn't just losing the debate, she was losing the room. She cleared her throat, gripping the podium's edges to steady herself. She needed to pivot, to take back control. Barron, you keep pointing to failed socialist experiments as if that's my argument. But I never said we should turn America into Venezuela. I'm talking about responsible regulation, making sure corporations don't exploit workers. Why is it that in the wealthiest country in the world, millions still struggle to afford basic necessities? A few cheers rose from her side of the audience. It was a solid attempt, reframing her stance, steering the conversation in a new direction.
But Barron didn't flinch.
Maya, no one is saying capitalism is perfect.
No system is.
But let's be real, you're not just arguing for responsible regulation. You're arguing against the very foundation that allows people to succeed on their own merits. You want the government to step in and correct capitalism.
But where does that end? How much control is too much?
Maya opened her mouth to respond, but Barron wasn't finished. Look, you talk about inequality, about people struggling.
And sure, there are problems.
But here's the thing, you're acting like capitalism is the reason people struggle, when in reality, it's the reason they even have the chance to succeed in the first place. You think government control fixes things? The same government that mismanages social programs, overspends trillions, and wastes money on bureaucracy? That's the system you want people to trust?
Silence. Maya's jaw tightened.
The crowd was listening now, not just the conservatives, but the independents, the undecided students, the ones who had come in open-minded. You said earlier that CEOs make 300 times more than workers, Barron continued.
Okay, let's talk about that.
You know what happens when you force companies to redistribute wealth?
They leave.
They take their businesses elsewhere.
Jobs disappear. Wages drop.
And the very people you claim to be fighting for? They suffer the most. A noticeable murmur spread through the audience. Maya's eyes flickered toward a group of students who had cheered her the loudest at the beginning of the debate.
They weren't clapping. Anymore.
She wasn't just losing the argument, she was losing the confidence of her own supporters. She tried one last time. So what's your solution then, Barron? Just let capitalism run wild? Let billionaires hoard wealth while the middle class disappears?
Barron shook his head. No.
The solution isn't to burn the system down, it's to make it better.
To encourage innovation.
To create policies that reward growth without punishing success. You don't fix a struggling worker's paycheck by tearing down the person who signs it. You fix it by giving them more opportunities to grow, to move up, to create their own wealth. That's what capitalism does. The audience was silent. Not because they were bored, but because they were thinking. Maya stepped back from the podium, her expression unreadable. She knew it. The debate was over. She stood still, gripping the podium as if for stability. She had come into this expecting to dominate, to present capitalism as the root of all inequality and injustice. Yet here she was, not defeated, but undeniably shaken. Barron hadn't beaten her by shouting louder or overpowering her with emotion. He had done it with calm, steady logic. He hadn't dismissed the struggles of working-class Americans. He had acknowledged them while offering a perspective she hadn't fully prepared for. And the audience had noticed. The moderator, Dr. Harris, finally broke the silence. Thank you both for an insightful discussion. That concludes tonight's debate.
A beat of hesitation, then applause.
Some clapped enthusiastically, others hesitantly, as if unsure how to process what they had just witnessed. But one thing was clear, Barron had made people think. Maya exhaled, running a hand through her brightly colored hair. She looked toward Barron, searching for arrogance in his expression, a smirk, a gloating look. But it wasn't there. He simply gave her a courteous glance, then stepped away from the podium. The debate was over. But its impact was just beginning. By the time students spilled out of Memorial Auditorium, clips of the debate were already circulating online. The moment Maya hesitated, the question about immigrants and capitalism was spreading fast.
Some called it a mic drop moment.
Others argued Maya had been caught off guard not because she lacked intelligence, but because Barron had asked something she had never truly considered. Twitter exploded with reactions. Barron Trump just exposed the biggest flaw in anti-capitalist arguments.
Brutal.
Maya was passionate, but Barron came in with facts. This is why preparation matters. Not a fan of Trump's politics, but that was an incredible debate performance.
Respect.
Even mainstream news outlets picked up on the buzz. Conservative commentators hailed it as a masterclass in reason over rhetoric. Liberal analysts scrambled to reframe the narrative, claiming Maya had simply been put on the spot and deserved a rematch. But none of it changed the reality. People were talking. The most interesting reactions, however, weren't from political diehards. They were from undecided students. As Barron walked toward the exit, a few students approached him, not to challenge him, but to ask questions. Real questions. Hey Barron, I always thought capitalism was inherently corrupt, but some of what you said makes sense. What do you think about regulating corporations more fairly? I'm a Democrat, but I have to admit, you made me rethink a few things tonight. Maya, watching from a distance, overheard some of these conversations. And for the first time that night, she wasn't angry. She was curious. Barron hadn't destroyed her, he had forced her to think. And that, more than anything else, was the true victory. By the next morning, the debate had taken on a life of its own. What had started as a student-organized event at Stanford had become a national conversation. Clips of Barron Trump and Maya Thompson spread across Twitter, X, YouTube, TikTok, and Rumble. Conservative channels hailed Barron as a rising intellectual force. Liberal commentators scrambled to control the damage, insisting Maya had been caught off guard and deserved another chance. But no amount of spin could erase what had happened.
The viral moment. The silence. The hesitation. The realization.
It had already cemented itself in the minds of millions. And the reactions weren't just coming from the usual partisan circles. A surge of students, particularly independents, began questioning the economic narratives they'd always accepted. Many weren't suddenly turning into die-hard capitalists, but they were realizing the issue was more complex than they had believed. Online forums buzzed with debates mirroring the one Barron and Maya had just had. I always believed capitalism was just about greed, but now I'm wondering, why do people still risk everything to come to America if it's so bad? Not saying I agree with Trump's politics, but this guy was prepared. That was impressive. Maya made good points, but she got stuck. If capitalism is so broken, what's the real alternative? Then came the responses from high-profile figures. Elon Musk, never one to stay silent on economic discussions, retweeted a clip of the debate, adding his own commentary, "Facts don't care about feelings." Solid argument, Barron. Joe Rogan addressed the moment on his podcast the next day. That question was brutal. I mean, I get what Maya was trying to say, but that pause? That was the moment she realized she didn't have an answer. That's why debates matter. It forces you to think beyond the talking points. Even Bill Maher, a liberal but often critical of progressive narratives, chimed in, "Capitalism isn't perfect, but it's still the best system we've got." This debate just exposed how little most people actually understand about economics. Meanwhile, Maya Thompson found herself in an uncomfortable position. Her usual supporters expected her to fire back, release a statement, do an interview, something.
But what could she say?
Any attempt to dismiss the moment would only make it worse. Instead, she took a different approach. In an Instagram post the next evening, she wrote, "Debating is about growth. About learning. I went in thinking I had all the answers, but last night showed me that no one does. I still believe in my principles, but I also believe in questioning everything, even the things I'm
most certain about.
Thanks to everyone who has supported me. Let's keep the conversation going." The post sparked even more discussion. Some praised her for humility. Others accused her of backtracking. But one thing was clear: she wasn't ignoring what had happened. And neither was the rest of the country. This wasn't just a debate anymore.
It was a cultural moment.
A week passed, but the conversation hadn't died down, it had only grown. News outlets continued analyzing the exchange, with pundits on both sides spinning it in their favor. But beyond the media noise, something more important had happened. People were thinking. This wasn't about Barron Trump destroying Maya Thompson. It wasn't about a Republican versus Democrat showdown. It was about what happens when real discussion takes place, when ideas are actually tested instead of just repeated. And that was what made this debate different. For years, political discourse on college campuses had been predictable. People spoke in echo chambers, clinging to the same arguments without ever truly questioning them. But what happened at Stanford? It forced everyone in that room, and millions more online, to stop and reconsider. Some students who had never questioned capitalism before began researching it for the first time. Others who had always supported progressive policies started asking harder questions. And even Maya herself, though she stood firm in her beliefs, admitted she had more to learn. That was the real victory. It wasn't about who won or lost. It was about breaking through the noise. About proving that debate still matters. That facts, reason, and logic still have a place in a world dominated by emotion-driven discourse. Barron didn't leave the debate feeling like a conqueror.
He didn't need to.
He had done what so few people do these days: he made people think. And that was something no viral clip, no news spin, and no partisan headline could ever take away. In today's world, it's easy to pick a side and stick to it.
It's comfortable. It's simple.
But real progress, the kind that actually changes minds and shapes the future, comes from asking the hard questions. So ask yourself, do you actually understand the beliefs you hold? If someone challenged you right now, could you defend them with logic and reason? Or are you just repeating what you've been told? The difference between winning an argument and understanding the truth comes down to one thing:
preparation.
So next time you find yourself in a debate, don't just talk.
Listen. Learn. Be ready.
Because when the moment comes, and someone challenges your beliefs, you'd better have an answer.